We're looking at the ethics of the fathers, and the Shimon HaTzadik laid down a principle that the world stands on three things, and he defined them here as Torah, Avodah, and Gimulut Chasadim. In the narrowest sense, of course, he meant Torah. He meant by Avodah, he meant prayer, Jewish prayer, and by Gimulut Chesed, he meant the idea of doing kindness and good deeds to one's fellow man. That's the way in which we interpret this in the narrower sense, but he's really saying over here something more than that. He's wanting to say that these are principles upon which the whole world stand, and to put it in its narrowest context, and to say, well, it all depends upon the way in which Jews study Torah, or our prayers, or our acts of kindness, kind of limits it and excludes the rest of mankind as well. So the presumption is that actually he is saying something of a much broader and important nature. On the last occasion with the onliners, I suggested that there really are three dimensions for each human being that are really important in our lives, and that really define us as human beings in terms of the way in which we function. And if we didn't have any one of these, we would be diminished. And the first one is the what is termed over here Torah, which means being able to draw on a morality which is bigger and higher than us, something which is absolute as opposed to relative, not a set of rules that simply fit with the times and do whatever, bend in whichever way we would like them to. And so this idea that we have to draw from a bigger set of principles which are transcendent to us, which are universal, and which come from a higher place, that is the idea of Torah. And that needs to be an important component part of all of our lives, because that is the way in which we keep ourselves moral human beings. The second is the sense of, as an idea of prayer, that we want to stretch beyond ourselves, that we don't want to be confined by our own physicality, by our own sense of bodiliness, by the animal instincts. We search for higher things in our lives. We want to touch a different kind of space. We want to connect with something which is higher. We want to transcend. We search for the spiritual. All of that is encompassed by the concept of prayer, reaching beyond yourself and outside of oneself. But a human being who is simply drawing down morality from beyond oneself and reaching up from within oneself is still a very limited human being, because it is a selfish kind of existence. It's about me and my own personal perfection, my own satisfaction. So there has to be a third dimension as well, and that is the one that reaches out to the people alongside me, on either side of me, to the right and to the left and all around me, the way in which I interact with other human beings. That is the third important principle, the way in which I share values with them, the way in which I show kindness, the way in which I work to protect them, the way in which I care about them, and the way in which I interact with them is the third leg. So these are the three legs of the tripod. Then there is one more principle over here on an even more general basis, and that is the idea that civilized society as a whole has to rest on an educational system, its religious institutions, and its political forms. And these map onto these three concepts of Torah, Avodah, and Gimulut Chesed. If you want to know exactly how that works, I'm afraid you're going to have to stay online until we reach to the end of our onliners, where we'll discuss that a little bit further.